Is one thing I want you not to fall for. I don't want you to fall for the following. That is idolizing the past when you're horrified with what's going on in the present. This is what often happens when folks are in their teens. They tend to default against what their parents or grandparents were saying because they want to have their own way. But as they approach 30, they tend to fall back on what their parents said because they want to be part of society, they want to be stable, they want to earn a living. So they fall back on what the previous generations did. Now, what should happen is not only that they wrestle away from what their parents said, but that they also examine their parents and the people that were before them, so that when they notice patterns and cycles, they see through them and seek deliverance from them. What often happens is the following, that in the late teens, early 20s, people kind of have relief from the patterns and cycles because they're partying this and that, and then they fall back into the patterns of their ancestors. And people say, well, that's just a phase of life. No, it's not life. That's people not wanting to face things, so they want to return back to whatever pattern or cycle their ancestors were stuck in. For example, there are people who complain about the LGBT propaganda, and people say that this is going too far. Well, in many cases, it does go too far. But don't pretend as if in previous generations things were better. Because in previous generations, people often tolerated child abuse by calling it discipline. They still do it till this day, which is a crime against humanity, which is a violation of human rights. Even though it's obviously not right and you can't justify it in any rational way, people still condoned it and they tolerated it. And because they didn't seek deliverance from it, they became just like their parents, just like their grandparents, and they've transferred it to the next generation. So don't see horrors in the present and begin to idolize the past. Because that reveals about you that you don't want to face things, that you just want to flee from things to be left alone. And it's this whole mindset of wanting to be left alone that keeps you stuck in patterns and cycles to begin with. It's this whole mindset of you wanting to be left alone that that turns you into an enabler of evil. What should happen is that you realize that something doesn't add up. You look into what doesn't add up, you see it for what it is, and you decide, I'm not going that way. That is what ought to happen. What often happens is people look for some group to hold on to, whether it's liberals or conservatives or progressives or um, maybe socialists, whatever. They look for a group to hold on to when they notice that things don't add up. Instead of facing what doesn't add up, they, they yearn for a group to relieve them. That's why Greek fraternities and Greek sororities are so popular in college and universities, because a lot of folks prefer to be stuck in a group where they are relieved. Even if that group is toxic, they rather have that than have to face things as they are. There are very few people that see things as they are and decide, I'm not going that way, I want better. The majority of folks just want to get in line. Even if they know that what they want to fall back on is not good, that they're going to justify it, they'll do it because it means they don't have to face the present. That's why it's very weird when believers join groups and keep traditions alive that go against Christ. I'm not talking about Christmas celebration, I'm not talking about Easter, I'm not talking about such external things. Ways of thinking, ways of relating to other people that cannot be justified naturally and that can't be reconciled with Christ. For example, this whole concept of respect and boundaries, when you go to the root and you examine it, you can't justify it. This whole idea that people have firm expectations, that they have the right to enforce it on you, and you need to hold on, and you need to conform those expectations, that it doesn't add up. That's how narcissists work. Someone has an expectation and they draw the line, so they put a limitation on you. And if you don't keep within that limitation, they attack. That's what narcissists do. But yet people say, if you want to prevent abuse, you need to have firm boundaries. So you ought to become abusive, like an abuser, to avoid abuse from the abuser. This is logic that this isn't real logic at all. It's actually insanity. But because people don't look into it, they don't examine it, they transfer curses from the previous generation onto the next. Why? Because they don't want to look into stuff. And when it comes to Christ, Christ makes you look into the mirror. Christ makes you comply with justice and comply with solutions. With Christ, there is no such thing as fleeing away and wanting to be left alone. That does not exist. Even in the lake of fire, the reprobate will not be left alone. And that's why they're in the lake of fire to begin with. Look, stop running away from stuff. See through stuff to overcome stuff. That's what you ought to do. I don't care what type of relief you're holding on to, whether it's a group of people, whether it's drinking, whether it's drugs, whatever it is, it's not worth it. Eventually, the thing you're fleeing away from will still be there. And because you've exhausted yourself with seeking relief, you'll be in a far worse state when you still have to face that thing anyway. That is why generational curses remain. Because folks are fleeing instead of facing stuff. Let me explain one more thing to you. It isn't true that what they call millennials are so fond of of the LGBT propaganda. That's not true. That's what the media tells you. That's the illusion they are giving to you. If it was the truth, if it was true that the majority of millennials embrace the LGBT propaganda, then why is it that so many members of the LGBT community are committing suicide or they become depressed? Why is it they are targeted so often? It is because it's not true that so many people embrace it. A lot of folks, just to not be bullied by society, they say that they embrace LGBT rights just to be left alone. And they may even go to a pride just to show sympathy. And why they're showing sympathy? Because they don't want to be charged or called a homophobe or whatever. But when it comes down to it, many folks can't stand that movement. It's not a natural thing that those people are promoting. So naturally, people can't accept it. If they were promoting eating pizza, then people would say, oh, come on. Okay, I don't like pizza, but if you want to promote eating pizza, who cares? Because pizza is food that you prepare, and eating food is natural. And pizza is food that people enjoy. Some don't because it's too fat. But okay, if it was a movement to promote pizza, no, people would think, okay, let them promote pizza however they want. I can choose not to eat pizza, so what's up? But when people come with a movement that promotes something unnatural, something that God did not design, what's going to happen then? People are going to feel uncomfortable with it. But society conditions you to unlearn this discomfort, that you're in, but that discomfort is your inner alarm going off, telling you there's danger. And you can repress the inner alarm only for a moment, only for a while. When people are in their mid and late teens, they're very open because they're not. I don't want a bit open. I don't mean that they're willing to accept everything. Of course, they have their bases that they received in their childhood. But people, let's say this: they're like clay that's becoming hard. The clay isn't hard yet, so you can still form them and shape them and influence them very easily. The moment they pass the age of 21 or 22, they are a bit set in their ways already. And people can change afterwards, don't get me wrong, but to change means they need to face what they've settled for. And a lot of folks won't do that. But here's another thing. Often, when people pass the age of 21, 22, they, their mind, not only are they a bit set in their ways, but they begin to evaluate things. Not everyone, but in general, people do this. And let's say that when someone is 16, they joined some club where they worship trees. They go to the forest, worship trees, screaming like witches of old did. Okay, it's fun. Let's say a girl joined this cult. She was 16, and it was very fun, exciting at the time. She even had 2 or 3 boyfriends out of the cult. But now she's 24 and she realizes, you know what? I want a stable family. I want a stable community. And the people from this cult, okay, they have all these excitements and all these conspiracy theories, but they have no solution whatsoever. You know what? I'm going to throw this away. Or maybe someone is born in a racial society where race really matters. And when they were in their teenage years, they didn't bother about the thing about race at all. But now that they are of age, that they want to find a marriage partner, they realize that if they choose a marriage partner that doesn't look like them, there will be backlash from their family, also from the community. And if they have children with this partner that doesn't look like them, those children may face discrimination. There may be violence against them. So then they think, you know what? Let me just choose someone from my quote-unquote, my own race. Even though I'm not into this racism thing, let me just get along with the racial expectations, because then at least people will leave me alone and things will function for me. So when people pass the age of 21, 22, they'll begin to reflect. Some people reflect a bit later, but people begin to reflect in their 20s. And some folks fall back completely on what their ancestors did, no matter how dysfunctional it is. And some people try to adapt a little bit. And there are some, which is a minority, that want complete deliverance. They just want something new. If you're part of that group that wants something new, I'm happy for you. Probably you're part of that group, and that's why you found this channel and you're watching these videos. Because I'm not preaching things to please people's ears. I'm not going to preach generational curses as though they are blessings, like many churches do, to please people. If I would do that, I would be sponsored by many TV stations. If I would do that, I would be receiving tens of thousands of euros every month as donations. But I'm not doing that, because I'm not here to make money. I'm here to educate you in line with Christ. I'm also not going to preach those progressive myths, which all sound good in the ears of many folks, because then I would be deceiving you, misleading you into a trap. I'm preaching Christ unto you, who is life and who is abundance. Okay? And the majority of the world's population rejects life and abundance. They just want pleasant patterns and pleasant victims upon whom they can dump the frustrations of those patterns. So they're secret victimizers, but they don't want to admit that. That's how the world is. And that's why the pattern cycles continue, because after the victims still hope that they will be accepted. And that's why they enable their own victimization, because they keep seeking acceptance from the same society that's victimizing them. But then there are folks that realize, hold on a minute, I don't want to comply with this. I want better. And then they realize that the only better there is Christ. And there are many people finding Christ. Praise the Lord. Look, when you reflect on your ancestors, you reflect on the good and the bad. Okay? Because your ancestors had good things. Okay? No ethnicity only had it bad all the time. They had good things. So embrace the good things they had as inspiration, but reconcile with Christ. Reconcile the good things your ancestors had with Christ. If you had good knowledge of training horses, you can adopt that knowledge. If you have good knowledge of how to maintain close relationships in a harmonious manner, reconcile with Christ. If your ancestors had bad stuff, see through the bad stuff so you will not fall in those same patterns. It's the responsibility and the obligation of every human being once they reach the appropriate age to reflect and to examine things. Now, not everyone sees through things immediately. Some people are slow learners because they're slow minded. You have such folks. They're not evil people, but they can be a bit stubborn because they're slow learners. You have them. Not everyone sees things immediately. But even slow learners, if they're realistic, they'll notice things when they reflect. And then you have folks when they reflect on things and they realize that Christ is the way, they turn into reprobates because they begin to fight against Christ. You have those monsters also, unfortunately. But they'll be in the lake of fire soon. When you reflect back, see both the good and the bad, and see the patterns. Okay? Don't be shocked by horror today and think, oh, in the past was better. No. Agree with Christ. Be at peace.